The situation around Iran is escalating rapidly after recent strikes and sharp rhetoric from Washington. President Donald Trump has demanded what he calls Iran's unconditional surrender, while his envoy Steve Whitkoff says that the US is ready to increase pressure if Tehran refuses to step back. At the same time, reports suggest Russia may be helping Iran with intelligence, raising fears of a wider geopolitical confrontations. So how do Americans see this conflict? How serious is Russia's role? And could the United States go as far as a ground invasion of Iran? This and other topics we will discuss right now. My name is Iryna Uzlova, and today with us is US-based political commentator and TV host of YouTube Rashkin Report and Rashkin Report in English, Yuri Rashkin. Yuri, hello. Glad to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Iryna. Let's figure out what happened this week, and Slava Ukraini.
Heroim Slava, thank you for your position and for your time to us. President Trump has demanded unconditional surrender from Iran and promised that the country could be hit very hard if it continues its attacks. Trump insists that Iran's military capabilities have already been severely damaged. What does his rhetoric tell us about Washington's real strategic goals in this conflict? Is the current strategy aimed at regime change in Tehran or simply forcing Iran back to negotiations?
Iryna, before I talk about the reaction in the United States, I think it's important to acknowledge the disconnect right now that is occurring between a lot of how news is perceived from United States and from Ukraine. Because I feel like my communication with different journalists and in general with Ukraine is showing me that Ukrainians are pretty happy and pleased that the United States decided to deal with another evil regime and overthrew an evil dictator, and one that is taking a very active role in helping Russia in its war against Ukraine. So I think this is one of those moments where we see diverging perspectives, and that's all right, because we can feel differently about things and still move together. And while in the Ukraine there's a celebration and joy that the United States is dealing with crises in the world, in the United States we see somewhere between shock and disbelief that our president decided to get involved in another foreign war in the Middle East, that his base has explicitly instructed him and was under the impression that he will be the anti-war president. This is going to be the isolationist administration. All right, maybe Latin America. All right, maybe Monroe Doctrine. But, they're okay, we're leaving Europe. This is good. This is from MAGA. This is mindset. This is great. But when we see that this president, after asking for a Nobel Peace Prize in 2025, decided to spend 2026 starting a war a day or a week or a month. And right now we're apparently are at war with Iran. And there is a pattern there because Trump is so far starting wars with dictatorships, with not countries that are going to amass. He's staying away from countries that can amass many allies. So he could not attack Greenland. He could not take over the piece of ice that, of course, United States military can easily handle. But it turns out that between allies and money, Donald Trump had to step back and hold back on his plans for Greenland for now. But when it comes to Venezuela, when it comes to Iran, we see that those are countries that do not have many allies outside of Russia. And Russia is a pretty weak ally, or really more like a client servicer that provides some equipment. And now Russia, interestingly, importantly, is providing information to Iran about hitting American force. I mean, the logistics information, similarly to how we provide information for Ukraine in Ukraine and its attacks on Russian invading troops. Russia is now providing information, and there's an order about sending military instructors from Russia to Iran to
Yuri,
help train them.
just have a
Yes.
minute. Trump has downplayed the significance of this, but why, and how serious could be this cooperation actually?
I think potentially this can really have a big impact, but this is a story that that will explode with the right audience. Because similarly, when you see that Ukrainians, I think it became very clear, and correct me if I'm wrong, about where Trump's priorities are when it became known in Ukraine that Donald Trump has portrait of Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump next to him. So that's kind of like it's one of those very clear signs that you go, aha, Donald Trump thinks that Vladimir Putin is a good enough guy to important enough in his life, positive impression, good feelings enough to hang his portrait on the wall. So now we find out that Russia is supplying information that can lead to, well, harm and death of American servicemen. This is information that for some people will not resonate too much, although you know what, I think it will resonate for everybody. It's just one of those things that it will resonate stronger, I think, for anybody who's concerned about our military. And while that should be everybody, it perhaps isn't. But I think for people who think about safety of our armed forces and do truly value our veterans, will be repulsed by this information and will be repulsed by a politician who thinks it's okay to roll out red carpet to a leader of the country that provides information that can lead to death of American servicemen. We know already that Putin was there was paying money for Americans being killed, and so now we're seeing that this is getting to just next stage where this is not a rules-based order anymore where we have the things that are not done. We see that if you have the strength to do it, if you're able to pull it off, you do it. And if you're Russia, then the United States is not going to really punish you. They will punish anybody else. We will punish India. We will punish China, any other country for purchasing something of Russian, although now we're weighing sanctions on Russian oil and shadow fleet. But we will not, as a country, United States, will not put even 10% tariffs on Russia. So to me, this is a fundamental, like a stop, a red flag or white flag, really, white flag, that shows that we are surrendering. And until we're able to do something differently, that's where our priorities are. But I think that at the same time, the story about Russia providing intelligence information to Iran is something that is viewed as almost insignificant and potentially irrelevant by many who look at capabilities and the outcome of American operation war in Iran and see how little Iran has been able to do. So if they have intelligence, that's not enough intelligence, and that's not enough force and influence to influence the outcome. And so far, we have not heard that it's led to anything. Well, there could be some actually. Maybe we have heard. We'll see. We'll see. This is a rapidly developing situation, but I think that this coming week we're going to hear a lot more about it than we have so far, which is practically none so far, from Congress, because I think Senate and House of Representatives, our senators and congressmen, congresswomen will be speaking out on this story, and this is something that will be thrown in Trump's face at different opportunities by different people. But this is fundamentally, it's it's a story that foundationally clarifies everything, but on a tactical level may not change much, because we already heard from our Secretary Hegseth, who ignores this, who doesn't consider this relevant or important. Again, there will be some of those who will say that the American army is so strong and so dominant, to combine with Israeli forces, and that no information that Russia can provide it will make a difference. But then again, there are nuances and there's details which are very unpleasant for those that care about preserving good relations between Trump and Putin, and are very revelatory for otherwise. I think that this piece of information, and combined with a really historic speech by Senator Whitehouse that was delivered, are some of the most important things that have occurred this week as far as international, like kind of almost tying us, reminding to the United States that we are part of the world. We are not just sitting on some island somewhere, like nobody can get to us, and we're all safe and nobody cares about our politics and nobody gets involved. We see from the speech by Senator Whitehouse about the close connections between Putin and Trump and Epstein. And we see now a story from Washington Post. This is Jeff Bezos' Washington Post that blows up this story, which I think others will be writing about, which is that Russia is providing intelligence information to Iran, and we're now also, I'm receiving information that's being sent to me that Russia now has an order saying that they're looking for military advisors to go to Iran. So there is this kind of a information that explains to us very clearly connection between Putin and Trump. And as long as we're in the English-speaking world, or particularly in America, are going to be thinking that everything is fine, and this is just something that is being done by somebody who is really bad at business, we're going to be in more and more trouble, because we can't just be dealing with this administration as a bunch of really inept morons. That doesn't address the problem. That's a symptom of the problem, because they're working with Russia, it appears. And if they're going to be, like, as Senator Whitehouse said, if Trump was a Russian, was not a Russian, was a Russian agent, what would he be doing differently? So we're seeing a very dangerous situation that at the same time has been very obvious to a number of people for a long time, basically paying attention to Donald Trump, paying attention to Putin. It's clear that they've had a long connection, they've had a long relationship, and Trump covers up whenever he gets mad, whenever the topic of Russia problems comes up. He calls Epstein hoax a hoax, just like Russia hoax. All of this is just getting packaged into this one really big piece of uncomfortable truth, that this war in Iran very well may be a result not just influence on the United States by the Saudis and other oil, the states in the Gulf, as well as Israel trying to solve its own problems, as well as the president's constant desire to enrich himself, but also by president's desire to take attention away from the Epstein case. And wow, Epstein class, Epstein presidency, now we have the war of Epstein. Epic fury, or Epstein fury, as it's been known.
You mentioned China, and I would like to clarify. War in Iran could strengthen Trump's position. Before meeting with Xi Jinping in April, our political strategist talked me about such scenario. How do you think? Can it be realistic, and in what cases can it strengthen Trump's position?
It seems to me that what is going on right now is weakening Trump's position, not just because of the terrible fiasco in Supreme Court, because now the tariffs are illegal and are not the tool that Trump was hoping it would be, and therefore his position, he already lost leverage in negotiation with China before he even started, and now he's showing that our munition supplies are melting practically away, and that means that our allies in Europe or our ally Taiwan might not get weapons that have been promised and scheduled to be procured for them for years and years and years, because the United States is now using up all of its resources and munitions in Iran. And I think this does not show United States in a stronger position. Now, there are some who will say, look, the fact that the United States is willing to engage militarily in a conflict should show to anyone, such as China, that the United States next can engage in a conflict, military conflict against, I don't know, take out Putin or show China who is the ruler of the world, because, of course, it is the one who is not afraid, and therefore it is Trump because he's fearless. But I think there's a reason that American presidents for 50 years did not start war with Iran. And we're finding out right now that those problems are rather large, because if we are as concerned about gas prices at our gas stations as it seems clearly we are, then seems like a really bad idea, because a war with a state that can lock us out of 20% of oil and create the catastrophe, pending doom with Hormuz, the Strait of Hormuz, is administration that continuously is not thinking more than one or two steps ahead. This is the same thing we saw when the United States went to trade war with China about rare earth minerals, and immediately realized that we went to a trade war with supplier of goods we need to defend ourselves against the supplier of goods that we're having a trade war with. It's just nuts. You can't. This is such bad planning, and that's what I think independents, in particular in the United States, are so concerned about, is lack of planning. Because liberals, Democrats, progressives in the United States, when it comes to war in Iran, are first of all concerned that President did not go to Congress and did not ask for our permission. But when it comes to independents, they're mostly flabbergasted by total lack of planning and hoping that everything was going to work out exactly as planned. But as Mike Tyson has said famously, that everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And now we're seeing that we have a plan, and for us, getting punched in the face is just not getting the response that we want. Because right now we went from we want to get rid of their nuclear program to we want a complete and total capitulation. It's a kind of a big spectrum. And considering now that we're finding out that it is unlikely at this point, according to our intelligence services, another leaked secret report, we're not likely to be able to change regime in Iran. If we're not able to change regime in Iran, what are we doing? Because the moment we stop, we're going to create and leave a very, very, angry Iran that is going to be now justifiably concerned about being attacked. Before we could say, you're crazy over there. We're not going to do that. But now apparently that's something that we can do. So that, to me, ultimately just leads to lack of trust that there is in the world towards the United States. And this is a proof that our economy is not about our dollar, and it's about the trust that people have in our economy and in our laws and our policies. And if we're not able to follow through, then there will be less trust in us and we will be weaker. And when it comes to negotiations with China, we will seem like a less reliable negotiation partner, and China understands that. Everybody understands that. That's part of what makes somebody like Steve Whitkoff's announcements about Ukraine better ask for tariff-free zone versus munitions and weapons so meaningless, because we know that Trump can wake up get off the bed off the wrong foot and get angry about something or other and decide that you're going to get punished and you're going to get punished, and accept that we see that Supreme Court is now standing up to him in a couple of very important ways. And if it makes our president weaker in his negotiation with China, then that's a terrible position that he's put all of us into. And I think that that's just something that voters need to take into consideration next time we vote.
The war in the Middle East is already affecting global energy markets, as we know, while the US recently allowed India a temporary exemption to keep buying Russian oil. How is this crisis changing the global oil balance? One question. And second, a small clarification. I often hear from analysts these days that when Trump puts Iranian oil on the market and before that he took control of Venezuelan oil, then Putin's oil and money will enter in future. So in this question.
Well, I'm not an energy specialist, but I think the key word here is future, in a sense that in the future, many things are possible. Venezuela could provide a lot more than 1 million barrels a day that it currently provides, but it doesn't, right? Currently, it doesn't. And in Russia could be, I don't know, a democratic state in the future. But, we're not going to live for 1,000 years to see all the future possibilities that can occur.
It's a
We
pity.
just see.
It's a
It's a
joke.
pity. It is a pity. But, we can be optimistic. But
Sure.
I think that, right, sure, in 1,000 years, who knows? But I think that when it comes to oil, people need to gas up their cars now. Like, we need to go to work in America every day, basically, and we need gas in our car now. And if the price is going to double, triple, I don't know what it's going to do, go up by a few pennies. Joe Biden had so much trouble. Joe Biden practically, Democrats lost a re-election because of Putin's invasion on some level, because when Putin invaded Ukraine, that immediately raised gas prices and oil prices, and they never went down to below the war level. And ultimately, Democrats were blamed for high gas prices. So, like, that was the attack that long term in the future, again, that darn future, led us to where we are now. So I think it's important to do the right things today, so that we have right outcomes tomorrow, instead of doing horrible things now and going, well, maybe in the future. Yeah, there will be different things in the future. But I think Ukraine needs assistance and help now, and Americans need help in gas prices now. And the thing is that Putin doesn't have to worry about consequences. Trump doesn't quite as much because he's limited by terms, but then he's got possible, jail terms that he could be followed. But Russia could be greeting him with open arms. So I think that in the future, many exciting things could occur. But until then, we need to, hope is a wonderful thing, but hope is not a plan, and we need a plan.
If the United States is willing to use military force against Iran, sometimes we dream that they could a similar logic even apply to Russia. I know that you cannot support such thought, but why? Because of strange feelings from Trump to Putin, or maybe Russia's nuclear arsenal makes direct military confrontation with the United States fundamentally impossible. Maybe this reason is the main, no?
There's another that has kind of been highlighted in a podcast I heard recently that did not occur to me, but something that really makes a lot of sense in Russian case. There is a position that American liberals and progressives have that it would not be a good idea, and perhaps not just them, that it would not be a good idea to destroy Iran as a state, simply because of the number of refugees and people who will be displaced, who will run all over the place, including to Europe and who knows where, and all the instability that will occur. Clearly, this is something that is concern of Western policymakers when they think about different things that can occur once Russia falls apart, as General Hodges has warned us years ago, is inevitable. But from Western civilized point of view, look at all the refugees, look at all the displaced populations. that are going to occur once Russia truly collapses. And so it seems like that may be one of the things that is keeping us from being as radical as we need to be, because Russia is getting weaker every day. After 4 years of this insane war with Ukraine, Russia is not what it even used to be, and Ukraine is not what it used to be. And in fact, I think it's really remarkable that we're seeing almost a Ukrainian renaissance when it comes to our understanding of military strategy and tactics in 21st century. Because when there's a war in the Middle East and everybody's reaching out to Ukrainians for help, because now this is the war that Ukrainians know more about than anybody else, except that Americans can build it bigger and better and with more technology and richer and more powerful. But still, I think this is just a situation where sanctions are not going to do the work that Ukrainian armed forces are doing. Yes, I think that the shadow fleet being taken and given to India, and different sanctions that are being lifted small for now, that are being done by this administration, is absolutely what this administration wants to do bigly. Because bringing Russia back from the cold and taking sanctions off of Russia is what this administration has always been all about. But it is impossible to do because Ukraine continues to fight back so darn well. And this is why Trump keeps pressuring Zelensky and explaining that Zelensky has no cards, and he's got even less cards now than before. But the Zelensky can't surrender because Ukrainians can't surrender, because it can't become part of Russia and agree to genocide, but also because it's doing better and better, because time is now working against Russia and continuously draining Russian resources. And now there will be even an opportunity to go and fight in Iran. So I think that while we can always say that Russia is a winner in this, because this is draining resources of Pentagon and this is distracting world's attention, this is something, ultimately this war is a loser for Russia. And so the longer it continues, the worse it's going to be for Russia, because in the end, it's disintegration, it's collapse of the state. And so it's holding with its last hands and feet and nails into this war with Ukraine, hoping that one big victory, one big win in this Trump casino is going to set Putin right again. It won't, because Trump casino is a loser, bankrupt casino.
Yuri, thank you very much for this conversation, for your thoughts, your opinion, and your position. See you next week. Take care.
Take care.
Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channels Rashkin Report in English, Rashkin News, and author of Substack. Yuri Rashkin, please subscribe to these channels and subscribe to our YouTube channel, War and Politics 24. My name is Iryna Uzlova. Take care.